including Arakan Army, AA issued a statement criticizing the killing of peaceful civilian protesters. Aside from the systematic violence attack by the military that target ordinary people, the military high command overseeing this carnage, now trying to whitewash itself by using the name Tamador State Administration Council (SAC), has been implementing aggressive tactics such as cutting off internet connections, arbitrary arrest, and unlawful detention. There is a vast abundance of evidence to prove that the Tamador's criminal activities are both systematic and targeted. Our citizens have documented and uploaded in the internet videos and reports of thousands of atrocities committed by the security forces. The persistence of the CDM since the systematic and targeted attack was unleashed on 1st February are confirmation that the military does not have control over the country, despite the excessive use of force by the security forces. The systematic violence committed by the military against the civilian populations are proof that the military does not have any legitimacy whatsoever. I am making this presentation to you today as the acting Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of the Union of Myanmar. I represent Myanmar. I was appointed to this post by the authorized body of our national parliament, which is composed of the democratically elected representatives of the people of Myanmar. As duly elected representatives of the people, it is our legal and moral obligation to the best of our ability, to exercise our mandate to end the military rampage and return Myanmar to orderly, civilian, democratic governance. We must ensure the rule of law is respected, and we have national and international legal obligations to bring justice to all those who have sacrificed their lives and freedoms against this systematic and targeted military violence against the civilian of my country. Failing to convene in person on February 1, due to the planned military violence, we, the elected members of parliament, took our oath of office and convened online. We formed the committee representing Pidong Sudodor, CRPH, to carry out our mandate of forming a legitimate government out of the representative duly elected by the people. The planned military bloodbath that started on February 1 were clearly illegal, and thus the military cannot be considered a legitimate or unlawful government, not even if the generals try to hide behind the anodyne sounding names of State Administration Council, SAC. The SAC will claim that its formations and actions are in line with the 2008 Constitution. This is far from the truth. Your Excellency, first, even if one were to refer to the 2008 Constitution, the military had no legal basis that would allow it to manufacture a false state of emergency where none actually existed. There have been no evidence of voter fraud. Moreover, only the president may declare a state of emergency, not the generals. To get around this, the military illegally and outrageously imprisoned the president, the head of state, and installed its long retired general vice president as president to declare a state of emergency. The illegal and illegitimate and no longer enforced 2008 Constitution used as a fig leaf to restore its power. Second, the 2008 Constitution itself no longer exists. It has been abolished. It was an illegal and illegitimate instrument in the first place. The process of drafting the 2008 Constitution was fundamentally flawed. It was autocratic and failed to take into account election results. The substance of the Constitution was undemocratic and authoritarian. Furthermore, the 2008 Constitution has empowered the Tamador to repeatedly undermine Myanmar's democratic transitions. Now, future is in our hands to establish Federal Democratic Union. On 1st April 2021, we have launched the Federal Democratic Charter, which outlines our commitment to ending the bloody campaign by the military against its own civilian populations that it is meant to be protecting and towards building a new federal democratic union of Myanmar based on the following values. One, democracy rights, gender equality, and basic human rights. Two, equality and self-determination. Three, collective leadership. Four, diversity, social harmony, solidarity, and non-discrimination. And five, protections of minority rights. It is of paramount importance to highlight the fact that the Charter is a fundamental political pact which outlines roadmap of the state building process and future peace process of Myanmar. All stakeholders such as CRPH, ethnic armed organizations, political parties, leaders of CDMs, and civil society organizations drafted, discussed, and ratified the Charter. As such, the Charter is a product of collective leadership and reflects the collective interests of the people of Myanmar. The Charter has identified steps and principles towards establishing institutions that will help the country stakeholders during the transition period leading to the development of the pillar of the modern and peaceful federal democratic union. Now, I would like to extend an invitation to the international community to support our fight for democracy. Firstly, we recognize the reservations of the international community in terms of direct physical intervention to stop the military systematic and targeted violence against the people of Myanmar and against the democratic forces. We are deeply concerned that if the Thermidor does not stop its present course of conduct, the situation inside the country will continue to deteriorate and will cause further human suffering. This would inevitably instigate economic instability and potentially leads to massive refugee outflows across Myanmar border and into the wider region. Your Excellency, the Security Council was established with the responsibility for maintaining international peace and security. We therefore urge the UN Security Council member states to take immediate concrete actions that places both direct and indirect pressure against the military and to uphold Pillar 3 of the responsibility to protect. Second, we appreciate all the efforts that have been done so far to put pressure against the Thermidor and the military high command masquerading as the so-called SAC. We urge all member states of United Nations and all international stakeholders to continue and indeed to increase their effort, political, financial, and security measures against the Thermidor until the military's violent attack on civilians stop and Myanmar returns to the rule of law under civilian and democratic rule. And that we ask for the international community's recognitions of the CRPH, Federal Democracy Charter, and Interim National Unity Government. The Federal Democracy Charter was drafted and approved by the CRPH, the legitimate body of the Union Parliament, political parties, ethnic armed organizations, and civil society organizations. It has full legitimacy as it is an outcome of collective leadership. The Interim National Unity Government will be formed and perform its mandate duties in accordance with the Charter. We seek meaningful support for our effort to restore democracy and build a peaceful, federal, democratic union which guarantees freedom, justice, and equality to all people in Myanmar. Excellency, the struggle for Myanmar people is not about the fight between political parties or two political forces. This is the fight between the people and the
women and children, the massive displacements and other serious violations of human rights. The 27th of March was the bloodiest day for the people of Myanmar, when around 158 people, including children, youth and women, were brutally killed by the security forces throughout the country, making the total of killings more than 600 civilians. In light of these alarming facts, we reiterate our strong condemnation of the military's lethal force and systematic attacks against peaceful demonstrators, including targeted gender-based violence against women protesters, as well as other serious violations of human rights. We are deeply concerned about the arbitrary arrests of journalists, including women journalists, and attempts to silence the media and eradicate freedom of expression. All restrictions must be fully lifted and the freedom of expression respected. It is essential that the humanitarian actors reach all those in need across Myanmar. We call on the military to refrain from all forms of violence and repression against civilians and peaceful protesters, human rights defenders, journalists, and media workers, and to respect human rights of all people in Myanmar. We urge an end to violence against children. All those arbitrarily detained must be immediately released. We reiterate that there needs to be accountability for all those responsible for the crimes committed, as well as for the violations of international human rights law. Crackdown and impunity must end. And there needs to be justice for the victims. We underline the importance of ensuring access to the UN human rights mechanisms to Myanmar. Coordinated messaging of the international community is needed, but it is clearly not enough to make the military stop using arms against the people. The United Nations Security Council is the only entity in the world which has the legitimate power to protect nations at risk and must explore every tool in its toolbox to end this horrible situation. To this end, we should start drafting a resolution that could also foresee sanctions, especially a comprehensive arms embargo in order to stop atrocities. All states must refrain from supplying the perpetrators with weapons. We continue to support the Secretary General's Special Envoy, Ms. Christine Schraner Burgener, and her efforts to engage with the ASEAN countries. We call military authorities urgently to grant access to visit the country's soil. Regional partners, ASEAN in particular, have a critical role to play, and it will be especially important if diplomatic and mediation openings emerge. We encourage their ongoing efforts in providing necessary support towards finding the solution. In this regard, we welcome the decision of the organization to convene a summit to address the events in Myanmar. It is crucial to avoid further escalation of the situation and regional instability. Refugee flows to neighboring countries have already started. Thus, it is critical to find an urgent solution to the crisis. Myanmar must return to the path of democratic development according to the will of the people. Estonia stands in solidarity with the people of Myanmar. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank the permanent representative of Estonia for his statement. I now give the floor to Ambassador Yule of Norway.
Thank you, Chair, and let me also express our deepest condolences on the passing of the Duke of Edinburgh. A huge thanks to the briefers for sharing your insights and experiences. They are a clear testament to the need for the international community and the Security Council to act to prevent further violence and bloodshed in Myanmar. We must ensure that democracy is restored in Myanmar and that the wishes of the people are heard. And we welcome this meeting as an opportunity to discuss this. Norway has from the beginning strongly condemned the military coup. We have continuously called for the immediate return of civilian rule, the release of President U Win Mint, State Controller Aung San Suu Kyi, and all others who are detained after the coup, particularly minors. And we call on the military to refrain from all use of violence, to respect human rights and fundamental freedoms, and to immediately end the repression of the civilian population. Yet, these calls from the international community and from the Security Council have been ignored. Widespread, systematic and lethal attacks by security forces against peaceful protesters and civilians have continued. It is appalling that children and youth continue to be among the victims, some shot while playing in the streets or even in their own homes. A total of 48 children have now been killed, and schools, ambulances, and healthcare personnel and facilities have been attacked, occupied, and misused against the civilian population. This cannot be ignored. The security forces are also targeting women, with hundreds arrested and many reporting sexual and gender-based harassment and violence. Women are also constitute over 70% of the civil servants dismissed for their active engagement in Myanmar's civil disobedience movement. Women and women's organizations are at the front line in the fight for democracy, and we support their equal role, rights, and influence in Myanmar's society. We also condemn the military's systematic repression of freedom of the press and media, preventing these stories from being widely told. Colleagues, Norway is deeply concerned by reports of escalating clashes between the ethnic armed groups and the military. There is an imminent risk of further escalation of violence into outright civil war. Safe and unimpeded humanitarian access to all people in need must be secured. The current situation in Myanmar is a threat to regional peace and security. The military's action have not only led to increased refugee flows into neighboring countries, but have also made the prospect of voluntary return of other refugees, such as the 1 million Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, more unlikely. Norway supports ASEAN in their effort to play a constructive role in this very difficult situation, and we are encouraged by the ongoing initiative by its members to find a way to involve the organization in humanitarian assistance to Myanmar. We are also pleased to see that the special envoy is now visiting the region. Despite the increasingly brutal crackdown, the protest and civil disobedience continue from the people of Myanmar. As we have heard today, their clear wishes are, and how clear their wishes are, and there is no time to lose. The Security Council must rapidly consider its options and how that further measures, such as targeted sanctions against the military, its many economic conglomerates, as well as a possible arms embargo, are under consideration. And accountability must be ensured to end systematic impunity. Norway supports the ongoing important work of the Human Rights Council and the independent investigative mechanism on Myanmar. Colleagues, the coup and the action by the military leadership are unacceptable. The Council must send a clear message that we expect them to immediately stop the brutal attack on their own people and on democracy. We must heed the call of the people of Myanmar to assist them in returning to the path of democratic transition that they have started on. Thank you.
I thank the Permanent Representative of Norway for her remarks. I now give the floor to Ambassador Thomas Greenfield, the Permanent Representative of the United States. You have the floor.
Thank you, Barbara. And let me just start by expressing, adding our voices, others have, to expressing condolences on the passing of Prince Philip. And we send our sympathies to the royal family and to the people of the United Kingdom. Let me thank you also for calling today's meeting, and thank you to all of the briefers for your comments and your insights today. They were particularly poignant given the situation there. Every day, Burma's security forces continue to kill people, including children, far too young to even know what a protest is. And unfortunately, this open conversation can't be seen by those whose views are most important, the people of Burma themselves. The military has blacked out their internet. By cutting its people off from the outside world, the military seeks to conceal its terrible actions and stifle protests and unleash even more horrors with impunity. And we cannot allow them to succeed. So to the people of Burma, if you can see this or hear this, and certainly our briefers can, I want you to know that the United States stands with you. And we will do everything in our power, in coordination with our allies and our partners here in the Security Council and elsewhere, to help you deal with this terrible situation. And truly, that does start here in the Security Council. We're proud that despite our differences, the Council has spoken with a strong and with a clear and a unified voice on this issue. But every statement the Council has made has been followed by further violence by the military against the people of Burma. Statements alone are not enough to stop the military from threatening the security of the region either. Already, we've seen thousands of individuals flee Burma into Thailand amid airstrikes on Burma's eastern border. And hundreds of individuals, hundreds, have tried to flee into India from Northwest Burma. 3 years ago, we saw how quickly the military's brutality sparked the displacement of hundreds of thousands of people across international borders. And I say categorically, we simply cannot allow the military to destabilize the region once again through its unrelenting campaign of violence, their campaign of repression, and especially against the backdrop of an unprecedented global pandemic. So we can all clearly see how this crisis falls squarely within the Council's mandate. At this point, only concrete action will change the military calculus. And I have to say that that action can take many forms. Several on this Council have already taken important steps to promote accountability for the military and to pressure it to reverse its dangerous and abusive behavior. One of our speakers actually made a point that we needed to take those kinds of actions more deliberately. These steps include sanctions against the military, its holding companies, and anyone who seeks to profit off the violence. They include maintaining an arms embargo on Burma. And they include ensuring that members of the military who engage in atrocities and other abuses against their own people will be held to account. No matter what actions we take as a council, we must insist that military authorities allow the UN Special Envoy to visit Burma without preconditions. And we heard from her today that they have turned down her visit. She needs unimpeded access to civil society activists and pro-democracy leaders, including State Councilor Aung San Suu Kyi, as well as President Win Myint. And finally, we strongly support ASEAN and countries in the region taking a leading role in calling for a resolution to this crisis and a restoration of democratic transition. We support an emergency ASEAN summit, and we encourage ASEAN members and all other countries to review their financial and other linkages to the military. The military needs to feel the cost associated with its horrific actions. The stability and prosperity of the region depends on swift action. The military has ignored our condemnations, posing a test for the Security Council. Will the Council quiver over language in yet another statement, or will we act to save the lives of the Burmese people? Will we allow the military to destabilize the region, plunging Burma into further violence and chaos? Or will we hear the calls of the people of Burma and help them achieve the free, open, and peaceful country we all know that they deserve? To me, the answer is clear. We have to act. Thank you.
I thank the Permanent Representative of the United States for her statement, and I now give the floor to the Chargé d'Affaires of France, Ambassador Broadhurst.
Thank you, Barbara. And let me add my voice to express my deepest condolence on the passing away of Prince Philip. I would like first to thank UK for organizing this very important and timely meeting, and also thank our briefers for their very powerful interventions. As we have heard, the situation is escalating rapidly in Myanmar. Every day, news of civilians, including children, being shot, arbitrarily arrested, sometimes even tortured, are reaching us. This has to stop. We are deeply concerned by the attacks on the right to freedom of opinion and expression, as journalists and media workers are also directly targeted. So I would like to recall our appeal for the immediate and unconditional release of all persons that were arrested in the wake of the military coup, and for their support for the restoration of the legitimate civilian government, including the State Councilor Aung San Suu Kyi and the President of the Republic Win Myint, to the end of the state emergency and the restoration of the legitimate civilian government. No one has physically met with the State Councilor Aung San Suu Kyi since she was arrested, and this is not acceptable. Allowing a rapid, safe, and hindered humanitarian access is also a priority. The situation as described by the briefers and the special envoys in previous meetings is absolutely alarming. The long-term impact of this crisis, combined with those of the pandemic, will undermine all progress made by Myanmar on the path towards development and democracy. So the interventions from the briefers today demonstrate once again that the international community needs to act urgently. This is both a collective and a national responsibility. I would like to reiterate our constant support to the work of the Special Envoy, as also expressed by the Council. A visit to the region is timely, but as others, we think she should also be able to visit Myanmar as soon as possible and without preconditions. She must be granted access by the military and be able to engage with all parties. I'm also glad that this meeting allows today for the CRPH to engage with the international community. The Security Council has sent strong messages, but so far those strong messages have not been heard by the regime resulting from the coup. We must go further in order to increase the pressure. Unity is key at the Council, we all know it, but unity should not mean inaction. The role of the United Nations to support the people of Myanmar is essential, and the General Assembly should also remain mobilized and unanimous in its denunciation of the coup. We also welcome ASEAN's efforts and encourage them to increase their engagement to find ways to support Myanmar in this dire situation and to work towards an inclusive political solution with all parties. We look forward to hearing the conclusions from the emergency summit that was announced for April the 20th. At the national level, as part of the EU, France has also supported the adoptions of sanctions. The first ones were adopted on March 22nd against 11 individuals responsible for the coup, among them 10 high-level members of the armed forces, including the commander-in-chief, his deputy, and the chairman of the election commissions. We are already working with our European partners to go further, to adopt as soon as possible additional sanctions targeting the economic interests of the military, while remaining cautious to avoid hurting the most vulnerable population. Finally, I would like to conclude my point with a special word for the Rohingyas. Their situation remains very worrying, given the humanitarian situation, the conditions in which they live, and for the constant violations of their rights. Let me remind all here that the Myanmar security forces responsible for the blind violence and repression today are the same one responsible for atrocities against the Rohingyas. We must not let them continue. Thank you.
I thank the Permanent Representative of France for her remarks, and I now give the floor to the Deputy Permanent Representative of Ireland, Ambassador Flynn. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to begin by joining you and others in expressing our deepest condolences on the passing of Prince Philip. Thank you also to our briefers, in particular Sai Sam Kam and Dao Zin Mar Ung. Thank you for your clear and powerful messages today and for your courage in standing up for your fellow citizens and the people of Myanmar. Ireland stands with you. Madam Chair, in the 67 days that have passed since the coup, we've witnessed the extraordinary bravery of the people of Myanmar, who have shown that they will not allow their democratic will, their human rights, as well as the gains of a decade, to be easily tossed aside. Sadly, this courage has been met with brutal and escalating repression, with hundreds of innocent people killed. The violence has been indiscriminate, with civil society representatives, members of the media, healthcare workers, minorities, youths, even children coming under attack. We've also seen appalling incidents of sexual and gender-based violence against women protesters. This violence must end and those responsible be held to account. I also want to repeat again our call for the immediate release of all those arbitrarily detained, including political leaders. Madam Chair, from listening to the briefers, it is clear that the very future of Myanmar is now at stake. Thousands more people have been displaced, including many seeking refuge across neighbouring borders. The country's economy, already severely impacted by the pandemic, has collapsed, and millions are descending into poverty and food insecurity. Fragile ceasefires with ethnic armed organisations are in danger, and the threat of a fully fledged civil war looms large. This cannot be considered an internal matter, and there can be no doubt that the crisis poses a threat to wider security in the region. Madam Chair, the events of the last weeks in Myanmar are an affront to the principles we all champion here at the UN. The international community cannot simply look the other way, as the military not only fail to protect their citizens, but actively engage in the brutal repression and killing of unarmed civilians. We need to send clear messages to the military that their actions will have consequences. Expressions of concern are no longer enough. We support targeted financial sanctions, such as those imposed by the EU, against those who have seized power and the economic entities that sustain them. We also have serious concerns regarding the continuing sale and supply of arms to Myanmar. We have seen how such weapons will be used to gun down innocent civilians, including children. This cannot continue. Madam Chair, Ireland reaffirms our support for the Special Envoy of the Secretary-General, Christine Schraner Burgener, and calls on the military to facilitate her immediate access to Myanmar. As has been said, that access was once again refused yesterday. We also strongly support the efforts of our ASEAN partners to find a solution to the crisis and welcome the recent call for an ASEAN summit by its chair to discuss the situation in Myanmar. Madam Chair, we are meeting here virtually, facilitated by the connective capacity of communications technology, while in the past days, we have seen further internet shutdown by the military in Myanmar. Today's meeting demonstrates that the voices of the Myanmar people cannot be silenced. What we have heard from our briefers underlines the need for us all to work together to urgently find a sustainable and swift outcome to this crisis. The people of Myanmar depend on it and surely deserve it. Thank you.
I thank Ambassador Flynn for his remarks, and I thank again all of our co-hosts who have spoken just now. I'm now going to give the floor to other council members, starting with the permanent representative of Mexico, Ambassador de la Fuente. You have the floor.
Thank you, Barbara. Allow me first to convey, as others have, the condolences of Mexico to the people and the government of the UK for the passing of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. I would like to thank the briefers for their analysis on the situation in Myanmar and its wider implications. Since the military takeover, Myanmar has plunged into political, social, and economic turmoil. Over the past 2 months, the Security Council has met on 3 occasions and spoken as one. However, despite the appeals to exercise utmost restraint, the Myanmar military has continued to escalate the use of force against the people it has the duty to serve and to protect. Mexico reiterates its grave concern at the escalation of violence and human rights violations. We are deeply disturbed by the increase in the number of deaths. According to different sources, since February, over 600 persons, including 48 children, have been killed. Equally deplorable has been the use of force against the ethnic minorities, such as the airstrikes in Karen State, which has led to an increase in the number of refugees and internally displaced persons. At least 2,800 persons have been detained, which include journalists and media workers. The rights to freedom of expression and of association have been severely restricted. Mexico reiterates its strong and continuous support for a peaceful, democratic transition in Myanmar and stresses the need to uphold democratic institutions and processes. We renew our call to the pursuance of constructive dialogue and reconciliation, and once again, call for the immediate release of the state councilor, the president, and other political and social leaders arbitrarily detained. We certainly support the good offices of the Special Envoy of the Secretary General, but she needs to be allowed to visit not only the region, but Myanmar itself, and needs to be allowed to meet with all the parties. And we strongly support, of course, the Asian efforts in assisting Myanmar in a peaceful and constructive manner. We still have time to prevent the situation from further deterioration, but it is of utmost importance that regional involvement yields tangible results. As we heard from our briefers, the much needed humanitarian assistance has been disrupted as well. Ensuring unrestricted access for the UN and other humanitarian actors to reach all communities is crucial. Mexico is equally concerned by the consequences of the current situation on refugees, displaced persons, and the ethnic minorities, including the Rohingya. Mexico underscores the importance of the recommendations of the Rakhine Advisory Commission, which contain important measures to create the appropriate conditions for the voluntary, safe, dignified, and sustainable return for all of these groups. A sustainable solution to the current crisis requires that all actors of Myanmar's pro-democracy movement fully acknowledge and address the situation of the Rohingya. Madam Chair, the people of Myanmar have high hopes in the international community. Failure to prevent further escalation of atrocities will cost the world so much more in the longer term. It is therefore crucial that we take firm, resolute, and unified action to reach a peaceful solution. Thank you.
I thank the permanent representative of Mexico for his remarks. I now give the floor to Ambassador Ladeb, the permanent representative of Tunisia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Barbara. At the outset, I express our deep condolences on the passing of Prince Philip, and I would like to thank the United Kingdom and the co-organizers, Estonia, France, Ireland, Norway, and the United States for convening this timely meeting on the situation in Myanmar. I would like also to thank the briefers for their insightful briefings. Madam Chair, Tunisia continues to be deeply concerned by the situation in Myanmar following the declaration of the transfer of all powers to the military and the detention of Myanmar's political and civil society leaders before the opening session of the newly elected parliament in February 1st, 2021. Tunisia reiterates its strong condemnation of the use of lethal force against peaceful demonstrators and is extremely worried by the increasing number of innocent civilian lives lost, including among them women and children. We call again for an immediate end of violence and for the release of all illegally detained persons. We also call for all parties to engage in a meaningful dialogue in order to restore peace and the legitimate order. We reiterate in this regard the importance of the respect of democracy, rule of law, human rights, and fundamental freedoms. Madam Chair, we underline again that while addressing the current crisis, we should continue to give due attention to the long-standing rights violations and discriminations against ethnic minorities in Myanmar, in particular the Rohingya. We are indeed concerned that the ongoing events and instability are making the situation even worse for the Rohingya and other minorities and are further impeding the humanitarian access to those in need. We seize this opportunity offered today to reiterate our call for the recognition by Myanmar of the fundamental rights of the Rohingya, including their right to full citizenship, and for the creation of the conditions conducive to the safe, voluntary, sustainable, and dignified return of the refugees. We underline in this regard the importance of holding accountable those responsible for abuses and violations of international law. Madam Chair, Tunisia supports the objectives expressed in the Federal Democracy Charter issued on April 1st by the CRPH, aiming to end the root causes of conflict in Myanmar, to ensure the inclusiveness of all ethnic minorities, and to build up a democratic system which guarantees equal self-determination and justice for all citizens. At the same time, we believe that any action that would further aggravate the situation on the ground should be avoided. We are particularly worried by the possible reignition of escalation of fighting between ethnic armed groups and the military that would further endanger the civilian population and threaten peace, security, and stability. The international community should continue to be united to call for an end to the violence in Myanmar and to help all parties engage in order to find an acceptable solution to the current crisis. We strongly support in this regard the constructive role played by ASEAN, and we encourage the intensification of the United Nations mediation efforts. I thank you.
I thank the permanent representative of Tunisia for his remarks, and I now give the floor to the permanent representative of Vietnam, Ambassador Key.
Madam Chair, first, I would like to join others to extend our deepest condolences to EU and the people of United Kingdom on the passing away of Prince Philip. We listened carefully all presentations, and we thank all briefers for sharing their perspectives on situation in Myanmar today. For Vietnam, we follow situation in Myanmar with grave concerns over the escalation of violence, tensions that have resulted in a rising number of civilian casualties. We condemn the use of violence against civilians, especially women and children, and call for an immediate cessation of such activities. The top priority now is to save the lives of people, and to ensure the safety and security of civilians, and secure unimpeded humanitarian access for all people in need, especially vulnerable groups. Therefore, we call on all parties in Myanmar to exercise restraint and refrain from acts of violence and conduct dialogue and reconciliation for the benefit of Myanmar people, as well as for peace and stability in the region. The international community should contribute constructively to help Myanmar to stop violence, to create an environment conducive for dialogue and reconciliation, while respecting the principle of national independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and unity of Myanmar. And in this regard, we call for more engagement, and we reaffirm our full support for the role of the Secretary General Special Envoy to Myanmar, and call on all parties concerned to facilitate her trip to the country. Madam Chair, Myanmar is a member of ASEAN, and 55 million people of Myanmar are members of ASEAN family. ASEAN always stands ready to assist Myanmar in a positive, peaceful, and constructive manner, and is utilizing all relevant mechanisms to assist Myanmar. ASEAN member states, including Vietnam, have actively engaged with all parties in Myanmar to promote dialogue and facilitate a peaceful solution to the issues. We call on the international community to support the effort and stand of ASEAN, and we hope the discussion at the United Nations on important issues should be in full consultation with ASEAN and countries in the region. Before conclusion, I would like to reiterate Vietnam's continued support for the assurance of the interests of the Myanmar people and for sustainable peace and stability in the region. I thank you.
Thank the permanent representative of Vietnam for his remarks, and I now give the floor to Ambassador Nyandu of Niger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to convey our deep condolences for the passing away of Prince Philip. We thank the briefer for providing us the latest on the situation in Myanmar and their perspective. Obviously, the current situation is caused by concern and a setback for democracy. It's imperative that the military refrains from further undermining the constitutional order and call for the liberation of all democratically elected officials currently in detention. We call for an immediate cessation of violence against peaceful protesters, as the incriminated use of lethal force against unarmed civilians under any circumstances is inexcusable. While expressing our support to the people of Myanmar during this challenging time, it's our belief that a closer engagement with the junta is needed to defuse the tension and find a quick way out of the current situation. In that regard, we should use all diplomatic channels and means of pressure available, including the good offices of the Special Envoy, local leaders and organizations, and those of ASEAN and other countries that have a sway with the Myanmar military. To reach that, the first step of engagement and dialogue at the situation is quickly deteriorating. It's urgent to start an inclusive dialogue as the country veering dangerously toward all-out civil war, with many groups are taking up arms, is even more worrisome. Against this backdrop, we should keep in mind that the current political crisis is not only affecting Myanmar, it also regional implications, especially on the humanitarian front. It has an impact of the plight of minorities and other displaced communities like the Rohingyas. It also affects the deployment of COVID vaccine in the country, particularly to the Rohingyas and other displaced communities. In this regard, we would therefore like to call on Myanmar military to meet its international obligation towards the Rohingya and urge them to accelerate the full implementation of all recommendations of the Advisory Commission on Rakhine State to address the root causes of the crisis, as well as implement other UN recommendations. We would like to insist on the voluntary, safe, and sustained repatriation of the Rohingyas. In conclusion, Niger stands ready to engage constructively regarding any action in order to find a solution to this situation. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Niger for his statement, and I now give the floor to Ambassador Naidu of India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I deliver today's intervention, my delegation would like to offer its heartfelt condolences to Her Majesty the Queen and the royal family on the sad passing of His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh. His absence will be deeply felt. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the royal family and the people and the government of the United Kingdom. Madam Chair, the Security Council has met thrice since the 1st of February, when the state of Myanmar entered into a situation of emergency. The Council has also issued 3 important statements, thereby demonstrating that all Council members came together to speak in one voice. India condemns the use of violence in Myanmar and deeply condoles the loss of lives. It is essential to observe maximum restraint. It is equally important to uphold the principles of humanitarian. India is convinced that there should be no falling back on the path to democracy in Myanmar. The rule of law must be upheld, and the process of democratic transition, which India has long supported, must be taken forward. The first and most immediate step in this regard is the release of detained leaders. India will continue to engage on measures to accelerate and support the democratic transition in Myanmar, under which the hopes and aspirations of the people of Myanmar are fully respected and met. India has the highest stakes in ensuring a peaceful resolution of the situation, given our long land and maritime border with Myanmar and a history of close friendship with the people of the country. We are cognizant of the serious impact of political instability in the country and the potential of its spillover beyond Myanmar's borders. Madam Chair, this is the time when we need greater engagement, not less. Lack of engagement will only create a vacuum which will prove counterproductive. We therefore support all initiatives to engage with Myanmar and resolve issues peacefully without any further bloodshed. In this context, we welcome the efforts of ASEAN in finding a solution to the issue. We also firmly believe that the United Nations should play its role and not be found wanting during this crucial phase. The Security Council has repeatedly expressed its hope that the Secretary General's Special Envoy would visit Myanmar as soon as possible. Please allow me to say a few words about the issue of displaced persons from the Rakhine state of Myanmar. In the first instance, we commend Bangladesh for hosting 1 million displaced persons in its territory. It is important for the international community to recognize and understand the humanitarian burden that Bangladesh continues to face and the efforts it has undertaken to ensure the well-being of the displaced persons. Towards this end, India has extended on-the-ground support for the displaced persons in the camps in Bangladesh. The international community must further support financially and otherwise efforts of the government of Bangladesh and also assist in ensuring that issues relating to radicalization in the camps and other security challenges are addressed in an expeditious manner. It is important that the efforts to repatriate the displaced persons currently in Bangladesh to the Rakhine state of Myanmar be expedited. We cannot afford to have a slowdown of this process and call on both sides to engage actively. India's ongoing developmental and humanitarian assistance in Myanmar is aimed at the socio-economic development of the country. We have been extending support under the Rakhine State Development Program to create much needed infrastructure that would facilitate the safe, speedy, and sustainable return of displaced persons to their homes. We have implemented over 140 projects under the Border Area Development Project in several remote areas in Myanmar. Our efforts in the interest of the people of Myanmar will continue to stay the full course. Finally, Madam Chair, let me assure everyone that India's efforts towards securing the interests of the people of Myanmar will continue to remain steadfast. I thank you.
I thank the representative of India for his statement, and I now give the floor to Ambassador Kibono of Kenya. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me also take this opportunity to convey our deepest condolences through you to Her Majesty the Queen, the royal family, and the people of the UK following the demise of Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. We thank the UK for convening this meeting, and we thank the briefers for candidly sharing their experiences and perspectives following the events which continue to unfold in Myanmar. I will limit my remarks to 4 points. First, Kenya does not condone any form of unconstitutional change of government. We firmly hold that any illegitimate occupation of power and use of state machinery to suppress the democratic rights of citizens cannot be countenanced. The vote cast by the people of Myanmar in November 2020 is the people's voice, a legitimate expression of their choice as a constitutional right and duty. For this voice to have meaning, the continued arbitrary detention of the political leaders of the country's ruling National League should come to an end. Second, Kenya is deeply concerned by the increasing levels of violence that have led to unnecessary loss of lives, including of children and women, as the Myanmar military continues to hold on to power. We condemn the disproportionate use of force against unarmed civilians and urge for maximum restraint by the military. Third, it is imperative that the military authorities heed the calls made by the Security Council and indeed other United Nations member states for an urgent solution of the political crisis. The continued delay to peaceful return to the constitutionally mandated civilian governance could exacerbate the violence, further exposing millions of citizens to security risk and undermining the already fragile economy. Fourth, regional leadership is critical. We welcome the involvement of neighboring countries and the region, particularly the ASEAN, and encourage them to exert leverage and facilitate a constructive engagement with all the actors towards an expeditious resolution of the crisis. The region should in particular play a central role in guarding against further deterioration of the situation, as it could have far-reaching security and humanitarian ramifications with domino effects in the region and beyond. Finally, I reiterate Kenya's belief that the viable path to resolving the crisis is through the expeditious restoration of constitutional order, the resort to lawful mechanisms in resolving any election disputes, and the immediate and unconditional release of all political detainees. Kenya stands in solidarity with the people of Myanmar and looks forward to an expeditious and peaceful resolution of the political crisis. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Kenya for his remarks, and I now give the floor to the representative of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Mr. Gonsalves, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador Woodward. And allow me, on behalf of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to express our deepest condolences to the United Kingdom, Her Majesty the Queen and the royal family on the passing of the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip. Moving to the topic of this meeting, St. Vincent and the Grenadines remains deeply concerned about the ongoing violence in Myanmar. We urge the parties to bring an end to the violence and avoid further escalation. Emphasis must be placed on inclusive and constructive dialogue that will focus on restoring peace and stability in Myanmar, as well as the protection of civilians. The killing, including of children, is unacceptable and must stop. These reprehensible actions clearly cannot continue. We reiterate our condemnation of the military coup and call for the immediate release of those arbitrarily detained. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the escalation of violence have further exacerbated the humanitarian situation. We reiterate the need to address the root causes of the crisis in the Rakhine State and to create conditions for a safe, voluntary, sustainable, and dignified return of the Rohingya people. The coup has disrupted the recovery from the pandemic and threatens the effective dissemination of COVID-19 vaccines. The people of Myanmar deserve a robust response to the COVID-19 pandemic and other long-standing issues. To conclude, we reaffirm our commitment to working with the Special Envoy and the members of the Security Council to ensure a peaceful resolution of the conflict. We emphasize the need for all parties to engage in constructive dialogue and to urgently restore the civilian government. We welcome the agreement of ASEAN to hold an emergency summit on Myanmar. And further, we recognize the significant role that ASEAN plays in the region. And so we encourage the parties to recommit themselves to the principles of the ASEAN Charter so that peace and security can prevail. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Gonsalves for her briefing, and I now give the floor to the representative of Russia. Mr. Supranenko, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Just first of all, I would like to reiterate our deepest condolences to the passing away of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. We would like to say that we're present here out of respect for our colleagues in UN Security Council, but it doesn't mean that we support the concept now distributed by our UK friends and share the general mood of this meeting. It does not reflect the position of Security Council members. Unfortunately, this meeting may serve as a reason only to further incite violence, while we all should be interested in stabilization of situation in Myanmar through launching of inclusive national dialogue. We do not want to be part of such scenario. As for the position of the Security Council, it was clearly formulated in press statement, PRST and press elements adopted in recent weeks. Russia totally shares this balanced position. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
I thank the representative of Russia for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of China. Mr. Guidan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. Allow me to express our deepest condolence over the passing away of Prince Philip. I would like to take this opportunity to make a few points. China is concerned about the current situation in Myanmar. Violence and bloodshed serve no one's interests. We hope that all parties in Myanmar will start dialogue as soon as possible to find a solution to the crisis within the constitutional and legal framework, and continue to advance the hard-won democratic transition process that suits Myanmar's national conditions. The international community should, on the basis of respecting Myanmar's sovereignty, political independence, territorial integrity, and national unity, step up diplomatic efforts and encourage the parties to narrow differences. We hope the Special Envoy of the Secretary General will play a constructive role in this regard. We also support ASEAN in upholding the principles of non-interference and consensus building, conducting mediation in the ASEAN way, and playing a positive role in easing the situation in Myanmar. As a close neighbor, China's friendship policy towards Myanmar is for all people in Myanmar. China will continue to maintain contact and communication with Myanmar parties in its own way to de-escalate of the situation. I thank you, Ambassador.
I thank Ms. Guedan for her statement. I now give the floor to Ambassador Kormoy Tun, the permanent representative of the Republic of the Union of Myanmar. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, allow me to join my previous speaker in conveying our heartfelt condolences to the royal family, the government, and the people of the United Kingdom on the passing of His Majesty Prince Philip. Madam Chair, Excellency, dear colleagues, I thank you, Madam Chair, and the permanent mission of the United Kingdom and the other permanent missions, namely Estonia, Norway, United States, France, Ireland, for organizing this important and timely meeting. I thank the member states for their support towards the people of Myanmar. I also thank the briefers for their comprehensive briefings on the situation in Myanmar. These are indeed heartbreaking. Our acting Minister for Foreign Affairs of Myanmar just apprised you in details of the situation in Myanmar, our future plan, and appeals to the international community. While echoing the salient points made by Acting Foreign Minister Daw Ma Aung, I would like to make some additional points. Madam Chair, the people of Myanmar and the whole world have deplored and condemned the Myanmar military for its acts of brutality and violence and killing of innocent civilians, which include as young as 7-year-old girl. We all can clearly witness the acts that are systematic and targeted. All their brutal acts have always been aiming to the innocent civilians. No doubt that these acts are not acceptable to all of us in this modern world. And I strongly believe that the international community, in particular, the United Nations Security Council, will not let this atrocity get going on in Myanmar. I thank the members of the Security Council and the UN Secretary General for the support extended to the people of Myanmar. But it is necessity to have strong and urgent actions from the UN Security Council. In order to save lives of innocent civilians in Myanmar, your collective strongest action is needed immediately. Time is of the essence for us. Please take action now. Madam Chair, international and local media, as well as social media, covers a wide range of brutal acts and atrocity committed by the military at a daily basis. To save our time, I will not repeat them here, but I would like to stress that the people of Myanmar feel really helpless because of the lack of adequate and strong action from the international community, especially the United Nations Security Council. Since 1st February 2021, more than 600 civilians have been killed by the military. If you wait a day more to take action, the military will kill more people, will commit more brutal acts, and will torture more people. Therefore, again, please take the strongest possible action without the delay through all means necessary and available. Madam Chair, the three forces, namely the people, especially our young people, who are forefront and risking their own lives to protest against the military. The civil servants and people at large who are joining the civil disobedient movement. The committee representing the Pidangsu Hluttaw are working hand in hand to end the military brutal campaign, to immediately and unconditionally release our leader, State Councillor Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, President U Win Myint, and other unlawful detainees, to return the state power to the people, to restore the democracy, and to create a federal democratic union in Myanmar. However, at this moment, our top priority is saving lives of innocent civilians and protecting the people of Myanmar from the military brutal acts and securing humanitarian assistance to the people in need. Therefore, on behalf of the people of Myanmar, I wish to appeal to the international community and the Security Council as follows. Protection should be immediately extended to the people of Myanmar from brutal and inhumane acts committed by the military. Humanitarian assistance should be urgently provided by all means to people in need. Necessary shelters should be provided, taking into account of the humanitarian ground, to those seeking refuge in neighboring countries and as well. No-fly zone should be declared in relevant areas in Myanmar to avoid further bloodshed caused by the military airstrikes on civilian areas. Arms embargo should be imposed immediately against the military. Targeted, coordinated, and tougher sanctions should be applied against the military, its businesses, and their families and their businesses. Bank accounts associated with the military and their members should be frozen, and the financial inflows into the military regime and its associates should be cut off immediately. Foreign direct investment should be suspended until the time as the democratically elected government is restored in Myanmar. Accordingly, I would like to call on all member states of the United Nations to use all possible means and platforms to realize the above-mentioned appeals. Your urgent and strongest action is needed now. We are of the view that ending the military bloodbath campaign and the military role in politics and economy will pave a way to finding sustainable solutions to the challenges we face with regard to the effective protection and promotions of rights of ethnic, religious, and all other minorities. In conclusion, Madam Chair, saving lives and prevention of human suffering are noble tasks for humankind. Therefore, I wish to stress that the international community and the UN Security Council have the responsibility to use all necessary means to help protect the people of Myanmar from atrocities, brutal and inhumane acts committed by the military through collective, concrete and unifying action in a timely and decisive manner. Therefore, the principle of the responsibility to protect should not be ruled out when the UN Security Council is taking action in this regard. We will always remember the help and support extended by the international community to the people of Myanmar at this difficult time and time in need. Please, please, please take action. And thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank the permanent representative of Myanmar for his statement. That concludes the statements from council members and the permanent representative of Myanmar. I'm going to give the floor back now to our guest speakers for any closing remarks and reflections. May I start with Daw Sin Ma Ung? You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and all your excellencies, and inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share what's happening in my country, and then to share the voice of our people. I just wanted to make closing remarks, like people of Myanmar are ready to pay any cost to get back their rights and freedom. And our people know very well what are the costs of long-lasting military regime. So that's why, as a member of parliament who represents the voice of Myanmar and our people, I have, responsible to represent their voice. Now, again, people are ready. I would like to repeat again, our people are ready to pay any cost to get back their rights and freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daw Sin Ma Ung, for your remarks. I'm going to give the floor now to Sai Sam Kam. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to say that today, Myanmar people are standing in solidarity with any oppressed people in the world, as well as in our neighboring country. And there is, we are seeing a very encouraging, emerging regional alliance between people to people. And then I would like to say that the social contract between the Myanmar military and Myanmar people has broken beyond repair. And I would also like to say that we don't want any weak intervention that will not deliver any result. And we had seen 1001 commission that has been organized and did not deliver anything. So may I reiterate the UN Security Council to immediately dispatch an enhanced monitoring and intervention mission to Myanmar, urgently impose a coordinated global arms embargo on Myanmar, and refer Myanmar military to the International Criminal Court to hold them accountable for the atrocity crimes, international crimes that they perpetrated. Thank you.
I thank Sai Sam Kam for his closing remarks. And that brings me to the end of my list of speakers. So may I thank everybody who has participated in this meeting, especially to our panelists and the people of Myanmar that they have represented. Their testimony has been powerful and clear. The UK will continue to work for an end to the violence, the release of detainees, and the restoration of democracy in Myanmar. And we welcome the leadership of democratically elected MPs in reaching out across ethnic lines to forge a roadmap towards the restoration of democracy in the form of the Federal Democratic Charter. And may I just clarify one point, that it is the long-standing policy of the United Kingdom to recognise states and not governments. Aside from the human lives lost so far, the humanitarian, health and economic crises pose a serious and growing threat to regional stability. We regret that the Special Envoy does not yet have agreement to visit Myanmar and hope that this can be rectified soon. We welcome and support the unique role and capacity of ASEAN and its member states in responding to this crisis, and we wish their ongoing efforts success. The Security Council has welcomed this opportunity to hear from Myanmar's people today, and we will continue to work with ASEAN colleagues, with Myanmar's neighbours and regional partners, and the Special Envoy on next steps to bring an end to violence, see the release of detainees, and the restoration of democracy in Myanmar. Thank you all very much indeed. This meeting is now closed. Thank you.